Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Recent weeks have seen a roller coaster ride for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, with Tesla boss Elon Musk's tweets rocking the crypto markets and highlighting volatility. In China, which has been home to a large number of Bitcoin miners, is stepping up scrutiny over concerns about proper regulation as well as environmental effects of the high consumption operations. So is this the beginning of a new era for making and use of cryptocurrency? To find out more, I'm very happy to be joined by N.R. Tongan, our independent current affairs commentator, Anthony Chen, former J.P. Morgan Chase chief economist, and Qu Qiang, assistant director of the International Monetary Institute at Renmin University of China. And that's our topic. I'm Zhou Yue. I want each and every one of you first to have your take on what exactly is Bitcoin and what is the appeal of it. Let me start with you, Einar.
Okay, it's a virtual currency that has no intrinsic value. It's notational. There's no actual coin. It's just something that's out there. And it was dreamed up as a way of cutting out transaction costs in the beginning. But now it's not so much. It's about $20 per transaction. So that's expensive. And it consumes a lot of energy. It's not that safe. And it's one of many cryptocurrencies out there that stress this idea that you can push money around anonymously, e.g. away from prying government eyes or
Okay, you're not very upbeat about it, obviously.
It's a scam.
Qu Qiang, what is your take?
Well, my take is that is the most solid money laundering network you have ever seen. It's the most powerful tool for the money laundering or money trafficking, underground economy settlement. Bitcoin does have value, true value, but not legal value, not moral value. If you can ever get access to the darknet, you will see how many businesses are handled through the Bitcoin, drug, weapon, human trafficking, anything you name it. They do have the true value anchor, but we won't like it. So I think this is some tools we really have to take serious about it. It's just not some pure scam.
And Anthony, I want you in on this.
Well, the Bitcoin certainly has a value that is given to it by the people that use it. It may not have any intrinsic value per se, but if people like it and more people adopt it, then the value goes up. If all of a sudden people decide they don't want to use Bitcoin or that it's more challenging or difficult to use Bitcoin, then its value definitely goes down. With regard to illicit activities, yes, it does facilitate the process of conducting these illicit activities. But you got to remember that in the old days, when there was no Bitcoin, hard currency was used to conduct illicit activities too. The only reason why we get upset is because, yes, this is much easier to conduct it, but it's not to say that if we got rid of Bitcoin that somehow all crime in the entire world would disappear. They would just find other ways to do it. But so right now, I think the biggest challenge to central banks around the world is that these currencies, virtual currencies, pose a competitive threat. And that is something that global central banks are not taking lightly.
Really, it is a competitive threat? And do you think it will replace the fiat currencies that we are using now around the world?
No, it won't replace them, and I agree with Anthony on this one point. What you have here is, monetary policy is, very important to governments. It's the only way they can fiscal and monetary policy is the only way that they can regulate many of their economies. They don't have the direct controls that China has. So they need this. They cannot afford to give this over. You remember Facebook wanted to put out their own kind of coin, and that was stopped in its tracks because it would have put way too much power in the hands of a private entity. So no, you're not going to see this. What you are going to see are blockchains being used, all right? And you're going to see virtual currencies, but these are going to be national currencies, much like China is doing with its virtual renminbi.
And Anthony, there is another thing, that there is only limited supply of this Bitcoin, so that won't be viable if a lot of people want to use it for a payment, transaction, or investment.
Well, yeah, that's certainly a valid argument that if you have an inelastic currency and the economy grows, you will need more of that supply. Of course, the proponents of this virtual currency would say, well, there are 7,000 of these different virtual currencies, and if you don't have enough of one, you jump to the other one. That does not say anything about the legitimacy of these currencies, but it's certainly one way to get around this process. But you're absolutely spot on when you say that there is a limited supply, and that's the argument that people from Bitcoin are use to say that the value has to continue to go up, because if the demand for something that has a fixed supply continues to increase, the only thing that happens is that the value of that currency does go higher.
And Chuqiang, there is another thing that caught people's attention recently. That is the volatility part of it. Tesla boss Elon Musk has made headlines after announcing the car company would stop accepting payments in Bitcoin, and the value dropped by 15%. So some entrepreneurs can manipulate the prices of a currency that much that make people very concerned.
Yes, of course, because Bitcoin or the Dogo coin or other crypto coins, they do have one thing in common, that is they're anonymous, and also they're not controlled by any government or central bank. So everybody wants a bigger piece in this game. For example, the entrepreneurs and the people with financial purposes. They can, if they can control this network, they don't need to have the real control, but if they have a bigger stake in it, or they can have most of the holding position of this currency, and then they can do a lot of things. For example, they can make a roller coaster ride of the different prices in different points, and with their announcement, so they can buy in low and sell at high. This is one way to profit it. And secondly, they can control this network for their own money movement. For example, there are a lot of companies running internationally, but they have incomes in different currencies. For example, you have your India rupee income, Chinese yuan income, US dollar income, and you have to move all the income around. And it concerns a lot of things about forex fluctuation and also tax evasion things. But with a Bitcoin or other coins like Libra or Dogo coins, you can avoid that kind of trouble. So there are many reasons for them to do that. But all this operation will cost the ups and the downs of the currency price.
And are there fluctuations and fluctuations? Because this is not normal currency. When you want to attack a currency of a country, you got to spend a lot of money. But how can Elon Musk, by just saying several words, and make this value of the currency fluctuate that much?
And that's the problem. It's one thing when somebody at the Fed or somebody in the Bank of China gets up and says, look, this is the economic outlook. Our currency is backed by, the strength and essence of the economy and the ability to collect taxes and things like that. That's one thing. When it's somebody who's completely unconnected and who just is very famous and he says, yeah, I'll take Bitcoin, and then the next day he says, no, I won't take Bitcoin, that should give people pause. Why would it be this guy who's affecting the value?
Or any guy?
Well, no, it was the Bank of China, and it was the virtual currency of China, and he was giving a report and saying, look, this is what the future is. You can see fluctuations, but not something like this. It is not safe. It is not a safe thing. China has gone to extraordinary lengths to talk about the difference between the real economy where things are produced and consumed versus the speculative economy, whether it's a bubble in housing, too much debt, or these crypto coins.
So Anthony, would you like to respond to this? Why the value of Bitcoin hinges so much on people's expectations?
Well, as I said earlier, it's a currency that depends on the value that people want to ascribe to this currency. And Elon Musk, the reason why he has so much influence, because he was a major company that actually decided to accept Bitcoin, and people in the Bitcoin arena decided, oh, that must mean that if Elon Musk accepts Bitcoin, that other companies will also start doing the same thing. And as other companies start to use Bitcoin, what happens? The demand for Bitcoin goes up, which means the value goes higher. And that was an exciting
But the fact is, there's no other companies following Elon Musk's footsteps.
I'm sorry, you said there were no other companies?
Yeah, following
No,
Tesla's.
there were other companies. There were other
Or
companies
not as
like
big.
PayPal and others that also were moving to accept it, and the expectation were that in the future others would. And the minute that he said, "I will not accept it for environmental reasons," that threw cold water on that theory, and the expectation was that there was less of a possibility that other companies would jump on the bandwagon, and that's why the price went down. It wasn't just because Elon Musk doesn't like Bitcoin. It wasn't because Elon Musk is saying anything about the fundamentals of the economy, but that the prospects for other companies jumping in great numbers was reduced by that action.
And Zhuqiang, of course, the Chinese government recently announced their policies that they will ban any mining of Bitcoins and trading of this here in China. What are the regulators thinking?
Well, there are many purposes of doing this. For example, this is really not a very green way of pushing around your currencies. Do you know, actually, there's been a very high value in mining the Bitcoin. Recently, according to my calculation, probably if you want to mine one Bitcoin, you are going to cost you like 5,000 or 4,000 US dollar. That is phenomenal. And also letting alone
and
the
by the way,
transaction.
60% of this mining happened here in China.
Yes, indeed, in China. And also, we're going to see if you want to make one transaction, and transaction fee in the cost of the Bitcoin is also very, very high. It's like more than $20 or $30 of the most expensive banks. We're talking about hundreds and thousands US dollars for just completing one transaction, letting alone the electricity consumed in this process. So, and another thing is that it fuels a lot of the money laundering and capital flight, tax evasion, underground economy. You're going to see lots of things happen around this tool. So I think there's every reason for all the government, not only China, but we're seeing many governments are doing the same thing. US, they're allowing the trade of the Bitcoin, but recently they have pushed a higher and a stricter demand on the know your customer rule. It's like if you want to withdraw your Bitcoin or change it into cash, and then you have to report to the authority and with many details. Otherwise, you cannot do it.
So Anar, Bitcoin is basically an algorithm, but the problem is that algorithm consumes a lot of energy, considering we are only probably 2 million left to mine. So it sounds not very environmentally friendly.
No, it isn't. And don't think that when everything's mined that it stops. The mining itself is the way that the system adjusts the books. So they're not just doing
and it's designed to be like that.
And it's designed to be like that. So right now, the Bitcoin is consuming more energy than the country of Argentina. All right, a whole country. It is consuming more just doing these calculations and these mining things. So even after the last coin is mined, they will continue to have to do this process in order to bring the books into alignment. Who's going to pay for that? All of a sudden, that's going to be very expensive because that's going to be half that $5,000 that we're talking about per coin transaction to do. That is going to have to be shouldered by somebody. So that goes back into the system. But there are other ones out there. Ethereum is a lot less energy intensive. It's a little bit faster. It takes 10 minutes to do your transaction from the moment you start to the moment you get confirmation. It's 10 minutes. So it's not this instantaneous thing that people think. But there are other the issue though comes down to what the professor says. No government or collection of governments is going to allow people and make it easy for them, despite what Anthony says, this idea of making it easy for people to avoid their taxes or do untoward things with their money, that is not in the government or the public interest.
So, Anthony, do you see that more and more governments will join the Chinese government to ban or at least restrict Bitcoin-related activities?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, we're going to have a situation where these virtual currencies pose a competitive threat to conducting monetary and fiscal policy. And there's no reason why the Chinese government, the US government, or any other government, whether even the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde has voiced some skepticism towards these virtual currencies, because any type of currency that poses a threat to the conduct of monetary policy, which, by the way, is done to stabilize overall economies, that is a viable function of central banks and central governments. if something poses a threat to that, there is going to be some calls for restriction and some calls for regulation.
What
And by the way,
exactly
that
are
is well
those
justified.
threats to the national governments when they're looking at this? What are those threats?
Well, the threats are that they cannot conduct stabilization policies without constraints. Because remember, the purpose of these currencies are basically to circumvent the actions of the government, and any responsible national government is not going to tolerate it.
So the presumption is that the regulation from the government is not a good thing.
Well, no, at this point, if the purpose of the national government is to stabilize the economy, regulation would be welcome, because you don't want to have the wild, wild west where all these currencies are controlled by forces that you don't know what they're doing, and certainly may not have the national interests at heart.
Yeah. If I can, I'll just make it really simple for you. Yeah. Governments wouldn't be able to control how much money is in circulation because it's not their money. They wouldn't be able to control interest rates because the interest rates would be based on cryptocurrency rates and other places.
Because it will fluctuate much more dramatically.
It's not even a question of it. They will have literally no power to do that except for those who are holding their currency. So if I have a cryptocurrency, it's outside the system. There's no controls by the government.
And Chu-Qiang, can you give me the worst scenario? What kind of a systemic shock it will give to the current financial system is if Bitcoin is widely used in China or the rest of the world?
Well, if Bitcoin will become the ultimate type of a form of the currency been adopted by human society, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen as the worst scenario or the must scenario. We're all going to die. This is not a joke.
Why do you say that?
Bitcoin has a very, very strict limited number, the total number. So which means this is a deflation currency, which means the currency would not grow its amount alongside with the growth of human economic development. That means we're going to see our society going on the death spiral of deflation, and the business sector will withdraw. And we're going to see people's job are going to be wither away. And then the whole society is going to shrink and then self-explode. That's what happened in the end of the Ming Dynasty when they're short of the silver. And also happened in the Inca Empire when they're short of the gold. So this is not a good idea if we're going to have this kind of a cryptocurrency to run the real human society.
And Anthony, already the Chinese government have issued their policies. What effect will this have on the use of Bitcoins?
Well, I think that when the central bank continues to expand the use of the digital currency, it's going to basically make Bitcoin less relevant as the other digital currency
it will not fade away
widespread
totally, will
and
it?
encouraged.
Will it fade away totally?
I doubt if it's going to fade away thoroughly, but it's going to become less relevant. There will still be people out there that will want to conduct activities unnoticed or in fact unmonitored that will continue to play in the Bitcoin space. So I don't think it's going to go away
probably
entirely.
It will remain relevant for those who want to do some illicit activities by using Bitcoins as payment for drugs, arms, and those kind of stuff.
I doubt that, because you need a large base of people to prop up the currency. In essence, this notational currency. If you just have drug dealers dealing with other drug dealers, unless it's backed by something, the chance, it's just not a store of value that you can rely on. It's too speculative. And it's very costly, it takes time, and it's not completely foolproof. I mean, there are ways of getting around, especially if somebody gets your password, or they're able to hack into one of these exchange centers.
But Anthony, there must be a reason that Bitcoin came into being in the first place. Let's talk about the technology itself, decentralized blockchain technology. A lot of people invested their wisdoms and algorithms into this. Can it be used in another way?
Well, I think it can. I think it's still in the experimental stage, but the blockchain technology is something that the financial system in the United States and really around the world are starting to embrace. We want to make it efficient. We want to lower the cost, but the blockchain technology has the potential to be able to offer reduced impediments, especially when you're thinking about the building of smart contracts, international transactions. Yes, we can talk about the fact that it may cost $20 a transaction, but when you think about somebody wanting to buy a house that lives in China or lives in Japan and wants to buy something in the United States, you start conducting these things, these transactions with virtual currencies. It offers the potential of lowering potential transaction costs. So the blockchain technology is something that my old institution, JP Morgan, has embraced and others have. So it does offer some potential. And again, it offers that potential via methods that involve a different type of digital currency, a stable coin, where you don't have the fluctuations that you have with something like Bitcoin.
And Chuqiang, China also says that we are embracing new financial technologies, including blockchains, digital currencies. So what can we learn from what happened to Bitcoins, and what are the aspects of this new thing that we can take from?
Well, blockchain technology is actually a very good fundamental technology. It's like the nuclear power. Well, you can create a nuclear weapon and drop it on people's head, but also you can build a nuclear power plant to help people to get energy, right? So blockchain is actually a very solid settlement kind of a fundamental technology. You see, for many years, the Bitcoin will never be hacked or be breached due to for all kinds of hackers' operation. So it's very stable. So China and the U.S. and the U.K. and Europe, and they're doing a lot of experimental things. And right now, the actual operation on this, for example, in China right now, they have the blockchain-based, we call it the banknote system. For example, they can link different parties in different sectors to put everybody on the same page. The customs, the bank, or the traders. So everybody can, no one can lie to each other, since everything once been sealed into the block, you cannot change it. And also we've been seeing people are doing the antique or art piece business. They can track all the buyers and the sellers. Nobody can forge the record. So it makes the whole business more transparent and solid. I think this is actually a very good news. We can all learn from it.
So there are values that we can see from this new developments in the financial world. Of course, let's look at the features of Bitcoins. There is the anonymity. There is that decentralized system that we see here. All these can be applied in the future financial operations of this world.
Well, yeah, everything is fine. There are some technical issues that I don't want to get into with blockchain in terms of the number of transactions you can do per minute, and it gets very, very heavy because all of these blocks have to be assembled, and then they have to be
at the same time.
Well, yes, and they have to be kept there, and then they have to be linked to the other blocks. But that's a technical issue which they can come up with solutions to. But the larger issue here is how you're going to control this. And everything that we've talked about could be done by centralized things. Everything Anthony just said about smart contracts, absolutely. But that can be done with virtual currencies like the yuan. The U.S. government has already said they're going to do it. Merkel has already identified that she thinks that, on one hand, virtual currency is good, but things like Bitcoin and all the rest of them are not so good. Remember, there's $2 trillion worth of these, notational coins floating around out there, and at some point, the carousel is going to stop, and people are going to find that they don't have any value.
Because nobody can control them, and nobody knows what is happening there.
Exactly. And, there's mention of stablecoin, but there's some problems there. You're depending on the people who are in charge of this platform to actually show that they have the $1 of currencies or value or whatever they're putting up versus the one coin. But they found out some of these that they're only covering 70%. So 30% is a kind of a float that's out there, built-in profit for them. So this is best handled probably by governments who have an interest, and they will do it.
Probably, Anthony, for the government's perspective, they can see this as a challenge or an opportunity. they can probably adopt some of the things that they see in the cryptocurrencies to better run the financial world. What would that be?
That would be great, because what it spells is greater efficiency, and everybody wants more efficiency and lower costs. And I do agree with the notion that we have to be very careful with the stable coins of some people not putting up the 100%. And that's precisely why that probably is something that should be put in the hands of banks that are regulated by the government. And I don't say banks just because I want to pick on banks, but I want to pick on institutions that the central government, whether it be the PBOC, whether it be the Federal Reserve, whether it be the European Central Bank or the Bank of Japan, that have direct control. Anytime you rely on an organization, stable coin, and you have no control over whether they're really doing what they say, then you're going to have the same problems, or at least part of the problems that you have with Bitcoin itself, that is a lack of control. So we want to take the best of these blockchains, and you want to ensure that it's going and occurring smoothly and as stated. That's important for central banks to ensure.
And Zhu, Chinese government is also experimenting with its own digital currency technology, and probably the rest of the world is also looking at it closely. Where it is headed?
Well, the Central Bank of China are issuing their own, we call it the digital currency, but that is very different from Bitcoin. Actually, there are two very, very different things. It's basically like your paper money, but only in the digital form. They use blockchain technology, but only in the purpose of anti-forging, and that's it. All the issuing rules, all the monetary policies will be exactly like the same when you use the paper money. And the customer experience will also be very, very similar.
And privacy will be protected for those digital currency holders?
Oh yeah, it's basically right now you're swiping your iPhone, you're using your Alipay or PayPal, right, every day. But right now, if you change it to your digital currency wallet, basically the same thing. You wouldn't feel even a little bit difference. The only thing different happens in the backstage, in the commercial bank end. But for the normal customers, you wouldn't even have to understand what's going on.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's quite that simple. First off, by having it, they are able to track every single piece of currency out there. So they know this will be huge.
But will they protect the privacy of those?
Well, they passed a law, basically, that says that the government can collect information. They can't disclose it or sell it to other parties. But the banks are going to be curtailed, both Alibaba and Tencent.
Before we're leaving, so if you want to give advice to those who have invested in Bitcoin, what would it be?
Get out.
What would it be for you, Anthony?
Beware that you can make money, but you can lose your entire investment.
And Zhu, your advice for
There
those
are always
Bitcoin
yin
investors?
and yang. I think there's always yin and yang of economy. We have $15 trillion worth of underground economy. You cannot avoid the yin part. So the Bitcoin just the surface of it. And we have to keep a very close eye on it, but we cannot make it go. So we have to learn to deal with it and regulate it.
All right. Very interesting talks. Thank you very much, Zhu, Anthony, and NR. And you've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Zhou in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.